Okay, so here's the continuation of our training regarding care certificate, and we are now on standard 14, handling of information. Again, as I said, there's a handful of information here, and handling of information is focused on confidentiality. So in the workplace, confidentiality means that anyone who is involved in the care of that person is allowed to know important details regarding the resident. To make it clearer, it's a multi-team in the care setting. So if there's an ambulance crew asking for that particular resident who had a fall, then they are allowed to a certain degree for certain information regarding that resident. But if that ambulance crew is asking because he knows someone who is in that premises or is a resident or a client in that premises but is got nothing to do with the care of that person, then you're not allowed to divulge any information. Another example is if a kitchen staff is asking regarding the care of a certain person, then yes, because that person is a member of the staff and part of the team. But if that kitchen staff is asking for a certain information that is beyond, because a relative or a friend to that kitchen staff is asking for a particular resident, then it's not allowed. So it's a bit tricky when confidentiality in layman's term is simply saying you're not allowed to give any personal information or detail. But in the workplace, it's a bit tricky because if the person is involved in the care, then that person is allowed. Another tricky example is relatives. If the person got a power of attorney given to a certain member of family, and then the other member of the family doesn't have, then you are only allowed to give certain information to this particular relative who got the power of attorney or who is assigned as next of kin, and the rest of the family is up to that person to relay any information. So it's quite tricky. Right, that's just the simple way of saying about confidentiality. There's loads of information here. Right, so let's jump to legislation. There are two main legislation that is focused on this handling of information. The first one is Data Protection Act of 1984, and the second one is the Freedom of Information Act of 2000. The simple explanation, Data Protection Act, you're protecting any personal information or details of your client. And the Freedom of Information Act is where if the information is needed because of investigation, so the police is requesting or the public is requesting, like a solicitor, etc., then you are obliged to give out that information under the Freedom of Information Act of 2000. So yeah, those are sort of the simple explanation. Just read through it, and there's more about those two legislation. And in here about handling information, we've got on how to protect their personal details. You've got password for the computer, there's firewall, and another answer would be authorization. So if you don't have permission to access, then you're not allowed. Also filing cabinet, or that is being locked or kept locked. Also folders that their personal details are not hanging around for everyone to see. So those are examples. Right, let's jump to the questionnaire. And in here, we've just explained earlier about legislation. So your number 1 here would be Data Protection Act. Your number 2 here is the Freedom of Information Act. The aim of this legislation is, and this is regarding legislation number 1, so the aim is to protect their personal details, and it's in here as well. Oh, the other one that we miss out is agreed ways of working, and that's like their care plan. So it's also in here on the questionnaire. This one, agreed ways of working, this includes, so that will be like their care plan, the policies and procedures in the workplace. So that includes in the agreed ways of working. And how does it affect the recording, storing, and sharing? It means that there's guidelines and rules to follow. So that could be the answer there. So the aim of this legislation is to protect the information, as I said earlier, and also protecting the rights of the residents or individuals regarding confidentiality. That could be your answer here. And how does it affect the recording, storing? Means that their information or personal details are kept safe. So that could be your answer here. Then legislation number 2, Freedom of Information Act. The aim of this legislation is, and it's over here as well. So as I said earlier, upon the request of the public authorities, we are obliged to give out certain information that is related to the investigation. And the other term for this one is the right to know. So it allows access recorded information held by public authorities in England. So those are the ones. All right. So how does it affect recording, storing? So the answer here is that it gives us right to request public records or documents. So that could be the answer there. So if you are like a police or researcher, then that is handy because of that legislation, which is called Freedom of Information Act. And then in here, activity 14.1b, part 1, use the diagram below to identify the secure system used in your service for recording, storing, and sharing information. So secure systems for recording, storing, and sharing information include, as I said earlier, password, firewall, permission, stored cabinet or locked cabinet or locked cupboard, folders or individual folders. That can be your answers on this secure system. Okay, next here, 14.1b, so part 2. Now that you have thought about some of the secure systems used in your service, provide an explanation of why it is important to have secure system for recording, storing, and sharing information. Make sure you use the following words in your answer. So the words are vulnerable, responsibility, private, trust, safeguard, protect. So the question here is in regards to why is it important to have secure system? Because it is our responsibility to protect and safeguard the privacy of our vulnerable clients, and also to make sure that their trust is not broken. All right, so something like that. So you can create a sentence where it relates to the importance of secure system. So again, it is our responsibility to protect and safeguard the privacy of our vulnerable residents. Safeguard the privacy and trust of our vulnerable residents. All right. Now, next question here. Part 1. For each of the statements below, decide whether agreed ways of working in relation to handling information have been followed. Tick either yes or no. So yes, no. Number 1, sensitive personal information about individuals is left on display. So is it protected or not? Because we need to decide whether agreed ways of working in relation handling information have been followed. So if it's left on display, it is not being followed. So no, you can circle this one. The last person on the staff computer has not logged out properly. And then no again. An individual is taken to a private and safe area to discuss their concerns. That's a yes. An individual's circumstance is discussed by colleagues over a lunch break. That's a definite no. The manager does not address a complaint made by an individual you support about a breach of confidentiality of their personal information. And then that's a no again. An individual's private details are taken and stored in a secure or locked cupboard. That's a yes. Two workers communicate about an individual when they are off duty through Facebook message. That's totally no. Alright, easy peasy. Then last page, is it? Yeah, last page. Part 2. Thinking about the statements above that would need to be reported, explain how and to whom you would raise your concerns or whistleblow if you feel or felt that agreed ways of working had not been followed. So the way to do this is, first, it needs to be in a proper channel or chain of command. So if you suspect or witness any untoward behavior and you want to report it, you need to report it first to the nurse on duty, if the nurse on duty, or to your senior. And if they are, for example, the nurse is giving out medication and you can't disturb them, and if it can wait, then wait for the right time. If not, move on to the next level, maybe the care coordinator or the deputy. If they're not available for some reason, you can then go to the manager, so that you don't jump to the manager immediately. If the manager is unavailable or involved in the scenario that you are going to complain about, then you move on to the next one, like operations manager or CEO of the company. If you are unable to reach them for some reason, then you can go to the next level, which is, it depends on the gravity of the event. You can call or report to the police, or you can report them to CQC. So the channel is first nurse or senior who is in line in your department, and then if that senior or the nurse is not available, you go to the clinical coordinator or clinical lead or deputy. If it's not available for some reason, you go to the manager. If the manager is not available, you go to the operations manager. If you can't reach the operations manager, you go to the CEO. If the CEO is not available for some reason as well, that's when you go to a police or CQC. It depends on the gravity of the situation, but that sort of is the channel. If you're not brave enough or not so sure, ask help to the person that you are comfortable with and who is not involved in that incident. So if you got a friend whom you can talk to and will guide you through the process, then that's also another way of doing this. But the way to do it is to remain calm, then report it to your immediate supervisor. All right, and that's it. That's handling of information, standard 14. We'll continue again on another standard that we'll be talking. Thank you guys, and see you soon.